Hello and welcome. My name is Sonia McMahon-Comartin, Bereavement Educator with CMHA Windsor-Essex. Welcome to this webinar. You'll notice that it is considered our webinar number 2, perhaps, and hopefully you've had the chance to attend or watch the first one, which is on foundational information on grief and mourning, as well as how grief affects us, what is normal, and also provides some healthy coping strategies. This webinar actually focuses on emotional regulation and mindfulness, and there will be some practical techniques shared in addition to information, as well as learning how to more effectively deal with guilt and shame. So whatever has brought you here, I truly hope that it is beneficial learning for you, whether you've been recently bereaved or perhaps some time has gone by since your loss. Maybe you're supporting someone else in a personal or professional capacity, or here for information. Whatever brings you, again, welcome to this time together, and my hope is that you will benefit from the information and the techniques shared. So thanks again for joining. So first of all, we'll start talking about emotional wellness. So that has to do with our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It allows us to clearly recognize and accept our feelings, both what we consider positive and negative. Our emotions really are what they are, but we do tend to label them based on how they make us feel. So ideally, if we can be accepting of all of our emotions and allow them to help us adapt to stress, life changes, and certainly difficult times. Emotional wellness is important because how we feel impacts every aspect of our life. For example, if we're sad or depressed, that can impact our personal and professional relationships, as well as our overall quality of life. And if you have a difficult time managing stress or expressing emotions, that actually can decrease your general well-being and lead to avoidable health problems. So that's why we do want to allow our emotions out rather than label them or feel, that others are judging us because of them. If we can find safe, trusted people to help us work through our emotions, that's really beneficial, because emotional wellness actually includes the ability to learn and grow from our experiences. So certainly we all have those ups and downs in our lives. We experience situations that are very challenging, but to do what we're able to be most well is really what's desirable. So the whats and whys of emotions. You may not have thought of this before, but emotions actually save us time in getting us to act in important situations, like alarms telling us something's wrong. Emotions that are strong can really help us overcome obstacles, both in our minds and the environment. I want you to think about as well that at times we may treat our emotions as if they're facts. The stronger the emotion, the stronger our belief that the emotion is based on fact. But a cautionary piece here, because if we assume that our emotions represent facts about the world, we may use them to justify both our thoughts and our actions, which can actually lead to more difficulty if our emotions cause us to ignore facts. So we do have to be mindful of the facts and not only get lost in our emotions. So let's think about and talk here. What is emotional regulation? What that means is managing really difficult emotions when we're experiencing them. So the more that we're aware of the emotions that we're experiencing, in other words, what we're feeling, the more confident we are in our ability to manage them, to put up with, or perhaps we might use the word tolerate them. Suppressing, so just trying to shove them down and not feel them, in other words, burying our emotions, can actually increase suffering. If we can embrace our emotions and just be with them, that is a huge help, as much as that is difficult and hurtful. In the long term, that is actually so beneficial, because if we don't do that initially, these emotions will creep up inside of us and can make us very physically and or mentally unwell. Sometimes our emotional arousal is so high that we can't actually access previous ways that we've used of coping. So having an understanding of the emotions that we're feeling, in other words, labeling them, helps us immensely. That supports us in our ability to manage moments of very intense emotional expression. Okay, so having that understanding, labeling, I am feeling very sad right now. I am feeling very frustrated. I'm extremely angry. Whatever emotion you're feeling, to label that and express that is most helpful. And thinking about that, we do experience a multitude of emotions. So to understand them, just wanting to look here, there's obviously a large spectrum of emotions, and some of the more common ones are labeled here on the screen. And you might even find their significance with the colors that they're labeled for you, right? We tend, for example, to often associate strong emotions like anger and rage with red, with a very strong, deep, powerful color. But no matter how we experience emotions, they are what they are. And we do, like I said earlier, have those ups and downs. All of us do, that aren't always predictable, especially when we have experienced a very difficult loss. Just want to highlight a few of these emotions that are labeled on here that may not be as familiar to you. For example, in the orange color, vigilance. That is the watchful or alert for danger or some other kind of trouble, right? When we're very vigilant. When we're hyper vigilant, that means that's exponentially increased, and it's even a higher watch or alert for something that we're fearful of, afraid, or may struggle with, that it's happening or to come. The word loathing in the kind of light purple color means a feeling of intense dislike or disgust, and even hatred. Going over to the next part, pensiveness, that's engaged in, involving, or reflecting deep or serious thought. So you can think about times when you've been very pensive. Another one that you may not be 100% familiar with is between the two purplish colors on the outside. Remorse. When we feel remorseful, that's deep regret or guilt for something wrong that we've done. Then, looking at the word contempt, over to our left a bit further between the lighter purple and the red, contempt means the feeling that a person or thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or even deserving scorn. And one other word that you probably have a sense of what it means, but we don't tend to utilize it as much as others. The right-hand side outward is a sense of awe. So that's an overwhelming feeling of reverence, admiration, even fear, produced by that which is grand and very powerful. So normally having that sense of awe, we feel more heightened, more positive inside. So just looking at and reflecting on the words written here, and as I talked about some of them and you read the words, you may even feel not only in your mind but also in your body the different sensations that emotions bring about within us. So again, they are what they are, a large spectrum of emotions that we all experience. We are going to focus on a few of them that are very common on our grief journey. Okay, so firstly, anger. You know that with anger, there can be a variety of prompting events. In other words, things that bring about anger. Maybe when we don't achieve our goals, for some reason they're blocked, we're unable to. Maybe we're experiencing pain, physical and or emotional, or not having things turn out the way that we hope and expected. Certainly, that's one that often brings about anger. Interpretations that prompt anger, they are very likely maybe blaming, believing things really should be different, that you've been treated unfairly. You may even ruminate or go over and over in your mind about the event that set off the anger in the first place. What tends to happen when we're angry, right? Again, think about that. Probably muscles tighten. Often our face becomes very flushed and or just gets really hot, feeling like you're going to explode, unable to just stop tears maybe, perhaps wanting to hurt someone. And you can think about expressions of anger, which we always encourage as much as possible to be healthy, right? When we're angry, we often want to physically or verbally attack someone or something. So that suggestion of hitting a mattress, a punching bag, a pillow, rather than a wall, those types of things, or writing, or ripping a paper to shreds, or yelling perhaps outside on a quiet road, or in front of a tree. We want to healthily express our anger. We tend to walk heavily, stomp, maybe slam doors, walk out, be more critical or complain, as well as more withdrawn from others when we're angry also. The after effects of anger, our attention is more narrowed. We may not always remember after things what we've said because we've been so overwhelmed with emotion. And it just makes us, have just such a more narrow focus. You often use that expression, I saw red, right? It just, couldn't see anything else. It was just so angry. And we may feel very numb and just not ourselves. And it can also make us imagine what the future situation that would be similar that make us feel angry. So anger, lots to it, right? And when we experience loss, there can also be anger that comes with that. And I want to read you a bit about anger as it pertains specifically to grief as well. Anger is a natural reaction to frustration, powerlessness, or injustice. Angry feelings are natural and healthy when we're responding to loss. However, anger is a more difficult emotion to accept oftentimes, as it can be powerful and even menacing, right? It just is something we don't want to feel, and it gets in the way for ourselves and others. Socially acceptable ways to express anger are harder to find, as it's not nice to be angry, right? We also use other words when we're talking about anger, such as I'm upset, I'm frustrated, annoyed, disappointed. Your anger could be justifiable. It may have a target. There may be really valid reasons, such as things done or not done, things said or not said, by others involved in the care of the person who died or at the time of the death. Your anger could be self-directed and related to your feelings of guilt. You may experience anger without a target, or you may not want to even acknowledge the target of your anger. If, for example, you're angry at the person who died. This can actually cause what we call free-floating anger that comes from internal pressure of intense feelings. You may find it hard to recognize as anger, yet it may show up everywhere and come out in all sorts of distressing ways. You may switch feelings so that you cry, hold silent grudges, then worry and feel guilty, or explode without warning, what we normally call overreacting. Sometimes you may use anger as a distraction or protection from feelings that you fear may overwhelm you. This is not wrong, but it's a way to have control. Anger may also mask a deep emotion, hurt, or injury that you're not prepared to address. So all this, I want to give you a moment to reflect on that. And also, I want to now go over with you what helps to ease anger. So thinking about this, if we can do things to be safe, taking care of ourselves and protecting others so our anger does not become harmful, learning and practicing techniques that are allowing us to express our anger, but in a safe manner, like taking time out when we feel that we may lose control, perhaps walking away, and that might be literally from what the situation is. And doing so right away, saying when you will return. You may only need a short time to calm yourself, but recognizing how important it is to do that. Diffusing our anger, letting the steam off, engaging in physical activity, often very helpful. Repetitive actions may be beneficial for you. And find activities in your daily routine that help you diffuse your anger. Like I said, even having a piece of paper, ripping it to shreds, that is safe, right? Paper that you were going to recycle anyway, so it's not even being wasteful, and just rip that to shreds. Or it might be crumpling, it could be scribbling, right? There's different ways to express and diffuse our anger. And we want to express our feelings in a safe place with no judgment, where we can talk through the whole story. I just mentioned, scribbling, that type of thing, or it may be writing and describing what's happening and or drawing, whatever works best for you. Examine the details and name your feelings. Expressing through safe outlets, so beneficial. It may be an unsent letter, or it may be an empty chair or taped conversation, right? You can talk to the person you're angry at. I mentioned it could be, facing a tree, for example, or a picture on the wall, whatever it is that you feel would be most helpful for you. You can talk to the person you're angry at and say what you really feel and think. You can destroy that letter or whatever you've taped afterwards. Hopefully this will help you put things back in perspective and decide if there are things you need or want to do. And even if someone has died, right, to use the tree, to use the empty chair. You might wonder about the value in doing so, but I would suggest that none of us know how helpful that might be until we try. Taking action, so identifying positive steps you can take to work through any wrong that you believe has been done. These might be real or actual actions, or they could be symbolic. For example, you might provide someone with suggestions about how your situation could have been handled differently, or you might work to make changes through involvement in the community, right? We do know that some people address medical concerns, things that they feel should have been done differently with their loved one, with the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for example. Might be something like that, may not be to that degree, but if it can be constructive in a time for growth and learning, that is normally beneficial. And relieving our tension, taking care of ourselves through relaxation, so beneficial when we're angry. Maybe getting a massage or some type of spa treatment, practicing prayer or meditation. And we will, as I said, talk more about meditation and mindfulness, which is actually a form of meditation. Mindfulness is the act of being intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling at every moment, but actually without interpretation or judgment. Talking to people who care about us and that they're able to hear about our struggles is also important. So just to summarize about anger, within our anger, there is energy for positive action. It arises actually from the same source as initiative. So personal change and growth require dynamic energy. So what we're saying here, right, when we're angry, if we can find that energy for positive action and change and purpose, that can be super helpful for us. So the next emotion that we're going to examine closely is sadness. Of course, we become sad when we experience the death of someone that we love. We think about that person as well as probably previous losses that we've experienced that can trigger more emotion. Another prompting event for sadness, things being worse than we expected, or being with somebody else who's sad or in pain. The way that we interpret sadness and we see things or our life as hopeless oftentimes when we are sad. We get to that, maybe pit and we may have a hard time digging out. Ideally, if we can keep some perspective and faith that not everything is as bad as it feels. Believing you'll not get what you want or need in your life, that's something else as an interpretation that can prompt sadness, and believe that we're not worthy or valuable. Biological changes when we're sad. We often feel tired, very run down, just depleted energy. We feel lethargic, so just no energy and motivation, as well as listless and want to stay in bed all day. There may be that pain or hollowness. You may carry that in your chest or gut, perhaps some in your shoulders as well, that heavy weight, and the feeling as if you cannot stop crying. There also may be difficulty with your swallowing, breathing, and dizziness. So how do we tend to express our sadness? Perhaps through avoidance, withdrawing, avoid even activities that used to bring us pleasure, talking less, frowning, not smiling, and sitting more slumped. After effects of sadness, we tend to feel more irritable, just touchy, grouchy, very sensitive. We may experience some sleeplessness. It may be difficult, right? So we label that insomnia. Could also affect our appetite and cause indigestion. Sadness also causes for some people to blame or be very self-critical. So sadness, to reflect a bit more deeply on it. Some other words that we may use to describe sadness or sorrow. One is sorrow, and another one may be emptiness, loneliness, and longing. It's hard to put our sadness or sorrow into words, as words often really don't seem to match the depth of our feeling. And I think that's very powerful, right? It's hard to put into words our sorrow or sadness, as words never really match its feeling or depth. It's also hard to talk about, as other people may not be comfortable hearing about our pain. We're trying to do more and more work around that and educating that it isn't about that we can just fix and make things better, but doing what we call hold the space for someone else when they're very sad. Being present with them and listening is so truly helpful. Because when we do not feel connected or understood, we may feel alone even in the presence of others. So again, to provide that understanding, provide that true concern and empathy is very beneficial. Sorrow is our sadness for the loss itself, and it may be expressed through weeping or crying. It also may include sobbing or wailing. The pain of our sadness or sorrow is heartache. We might even say that our heart is broken, or that we feel wounded, like being half of a person. So if you have, or if you are experiencing some of those types of things, know that as difficult as it is normal. And as you do this work, the depth and intensity of that pain will continue to soften. You may wonder right now how that can be, but again, through talking, sharing, allowing your emotions out and being supported personally and or professionally, there will be progression that you make in your grief. Our sorrow is related to companionship and the relationship that we had with the person that we're missing, and the love and connection that we shared with them. We very likely want the person back and want the relationship to continue. We want someone to love and care for who loves and cares for us in return. We're missing sharing in daily experiences and the intimate knowing of a close loved one. We may feel like we don't even belong right now. So when we have the intensity of these sad feelings, what's helpful? We do need to honor our sadness. It's natural when we experience loss. So we need to give ourselves permission to include grief as part of our life right now. Balance feeling the sadness with doing things that we need to do. Lower your expectations of yourself, what you need to accomplish each day. Sharing our experiences, finding people with whom you can be sad. The company of other bereaved people can be comforting, as you will recognize that they'll have some similar experiences and understanding. And that's why so many people in our support groups find comfort and peacefulness, because while no one can take their pain away, they truly feel that others understand. Expressing our sorrow may be helpful to have a regular time and place where you allow yourself to be sad. That might be in your morning shower, at the graveside, sitting on a memorial bench. You choose what works for you, but it's suggested that evening is not as good a time for this, as deep emotion can disturb our sleep. Remember, as I'm talking about this, grief is very individual. We all experience differently. So it's not about right or wrongs, but it's about what works best for each of us. And create ways of remembering. Find meaningful yet realistic ways to keep the person who died in your life. Talk to them. Still celebrate their birthday if you'd like. Put up a Christmas stocking for them, maybe one that they always used, or perhaps it's a new one you purchased. Again, not right or wrong, your choice. Keep your loved ones' pictures out, talk about them, or even, talk to their picture, embrace their picture. So many people have said to me, you're going to think this is crazy, but I hug and kiss my loved one's picture. Not crazy at all. If that's helpful along your road of grief, by all means, do that. You'll find that whatever feels natural to you will be positive, will be helpful. And just a little blurb to wrap up this piece on sadness. In the prophet, Khalil Gibran says, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. Once the harder part of sadness is done, there comes a sweetness in which you are able to recall the good times. Memories bring a sense of loving and being loved." So again, that is the sadness piece. And I just want to piggyback on that a little bit to talk about hopelessness and despair, because in addition to sadness, we often wonder and have a difficult time having hope. So hopelessness, despair, meaninglessness, and void are words used to describe feelings that emerge as we face changes in our lives that result from loss. It may be that everything is different, or at least seems different, or all that you held dear and true about love or life has seemed to fade away or disintegrated. You may experience fear and lack of confidence about the future. You may not be able to find the courage to put your feelings into words when you can't believe in a future, or you have uncertainty, you have very mixed feelings, you go back and forth or feel ambivalent about what your future may be. Your grief may not be the way you thought it would be, and possibly you never thought you'd feel this way. If you see no point in going on, and it's hard to find a purpose, you wonder how long you can go on living in these circumstances. Depression, suicidal thoughts, or a longing to have life be over may plague you right now. So know that there is that fine line, that there is the tendency to question our life's meaning after a very significant loss. But if we can maintain the hope, if we can know that we do have meaning and purpose, that we do have others around us who love us and will support us, in order to grow and take steps from this difficult time. I'm sure there have been and will be steps forward and steps back, right? That's what we all experience in loss journeys. But knowing that as you continue to have the courage and allow others to support you, that there ultimately will be more steps forward as the pain will be there. It will always be part of who you are, and you'll have that person, as a large part of what's contained in your heart. But yet, there will be some pulling. There certainly will be some missing. But if we can do the work, knowing that we have life ahead of us and many people who still love us and we love in return. Hopelessness and despair can come at moments along the way or be a significant portion of your grief journey. These feelings are related to depression, and you or others might even call that. And often I'm asked about the difference between depression and grief. And it's very common to feel depressed when we are grieving, right? Because things are off balance. We feel that we've lost so much. But when there is no ability to engage in day-to-day functioning, when we have a difficult time doing anything, where there feels like there's no purpose to life anymore. Those of you who did attend the webinar one, remember we differentiated between normative grief and clinical depression. So if you're questioning that, certainly reaching out for some support is what you want and need to do. In grief, our moods are variable, and we have a large range of emotions. For example, we do have and we want to have moments when we can laugh, and our deceased loved one would want that for us as well. But in clinical depression, our mood is consistently low and we're emotionally very flat. We fear that it may always be this way. Remember, this is actually an in-between time. If you can think of it as a transition where you're working towards integrating the loss that you've experienced, what was and has been, to what is now. The stillness or emptiness, as much as it may be very difficult to bear, is actually what allows us to move into what is to come. So what truly helps us when we feel so hopeless and despair? What might help us to ease that? Sharing our ambivalence. If we're uncertain how to go on, seeking help from your doctor, therapist, a support group, maybe a spiritual advisor and or a trusted friend. It doesn't have to be a large circle of support, but people whom you deeply trust and care for you, that will get you such a long ways. Allow others to help you. Let them know you're struggling. If you can, spend time with family. That might be in your family circle, the person who died, or if it's outside your family circle and you're a friend, spending time with that family of the person who unfortunately died. Identify people who have been through this and survived. They can be a source of hope and inspiration for you. And these may even be people that you haven't thought of in your own social network. Value this time. It is a time of transition and change. Allow yourself to reflect where you've been and where you might be going. Imagine a seed has been planted in the ground, in the dark, and it's preparing to grow. I really think there's a lot to be said about that statement, right? That a seed has been planted in the ground. Right now, it does feel dark. We wonder about light and whether and when we will see that light. But if we can have the confidence and faith, knowing and learning from many others who have experienced loss, that yes, we can and we will be able to do this. Again, it takes time and work, and it's not just time that heals, but what we do in that time. Nurturing ourselves, praying or meditating regularly, spending quiet time in nature, and allowing the beauty of our world to just touch you. Notice the continuation of life cycles. That can bring about some mixed feelings as the world goes on. There's birth of babies, animals, what have you. There may be some questioning, even in the warmer months of spring and summer, when we assume people may be feeling better in their grief, they may not be because of the continuation of life. But for them, it feels like it's stopped. But try to grab onto what does give you some hope and peace and even small glimmers of enjoyment. You may find that it helps to keep a journal or to record your progress in some way. Remember to really value small accomplishments. And if you are a person who keeps a journal, I would suggest dating that as well, because when you later look back, you will recognize progress. You will recognize things that have changed within you or within your life that you didn't see before. And with grief, we encourage baby steps, and the process of growth and change and adjusting to integrating the death into your life can be so small that we don't recognize it. But that's why dating what you enter into your journal is so helpful, just to see, oh, okay, 3 months ago, this is where I was, or 6 months ago, etc. And now thinking about the other side of hopelessness, we do need to value our small accomplishments, recognizing the natural cycles of life can bring acceptance of ourselves and our grief journey. Being in touch with the beauty of the world, as I said, hopefully brings even a small amount of peace. And this quote may be helpful as well to you, written by May Sarton. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. So again, reflecting on, yes, a difficult journey, but even small pieces that can ease your hope and despair. Now we'll move on to fear. Prompting events in our life that can bring about fear. Having our life, health, or well-being threatened. Unfamiliar situations may as well. Or being in a situation that you were previously and you were threatened or you got hurt. Interpretations that prompt fear. Believing that you will not get the help that you need or want, or you might lose the help you have. Believing that you're helpless or losing a sense of control. Also believing you may lose something valuable. You may be hurt or harmed. Someone may criticize, reject, or dislike you. When we're fearful, our bodies tend to change in the way that we become more short of breath, probably very fast heartbeat. Muscles may tense up. We want to run away or avoid things, right? That flight response. We just want to get out of there because we're afraid. We may feel very nauseous, that feeling of discomfort and what we often refer to as butterflies in our stomach. There also may be a choking sensation or lump in our throat that just feels like it persists. How do we express fear? Feeling of wanting to run away, pleading or crying for help, screaming, maybe just that freeze, right? That can be that response as well. Or trying not to move at all. Crying, whimpering, that also may be how we express fear, and we could have physical ways as well, right? With our digestive tract, the functioning of it in the form of diarrhea or vomiting. After effects of fear, our attention is probably narrowed, and it's just tough to think about, where we were and what we went through. There may be the desire to isolate yourself as well and lose your ability to focus, become disoriented or dazed, and imagining the possibility of more loss. That's a big one when someone has died. We think of our others in our life also going to not be present for us anymore, or even question our own mortality. And especially when there was someone that you lived with and depended on and they have died, there is a very real fear about who will take care of things that they always did. My best suggestion for that, again, baby steps. Right now, in this season of summer, we need to think about, having someone cut the grass if we don't have that ability ourselves, and our loved one always did that. But jumping ahead to who's going to shovel my snow at this time that's just going to be overwhelming. So not that we can ignore it until the first snowfall comes, but leaving that aside for the moment and allowing yourself time to work that out, right? So the theory of, small steps, inch by inch, going slowly, not quickly, and trying to solve things, because that doesn't serve us well. It can cause us more fear and anxiety. Fear and anxiety, by the way, are very powerful physical sensations, which can include, like I said, rapid shallow breathing, nervousness and agitation, upset stomach, or heart palpitations. Usually fear is telling us to avoid or get away from some danger. But when we're grieving, we get this signal without any real danger present. Our fear may be about the future rather than the present. And I just made reference to that, right? So it can be. So trying to just be more in the present and dealing with what we need to right now. Fear and anxiety, as well as panic, are often felt within our physical body. If you fear being unable to cope, not knowing how to go on or what life will be like, you may not want to go out or face new things or new people. You might just feel very panicked or paralyzed. If you have too much to deal with, your fear can become generalized into nameless dread. So if there's just so much, it can feel compounded and it can feel very unmanageable. So that's why we want to, chunk it down, small pieces of things to deal with, so we don't have that accumulation of fear and stress, which creates chronic anxiety and possibly panic attacks. You may be afraid of the intensity of your own emotions and wonder if you're going crazy. You may worry about loss of control, thinking that if you begin to express emotion, you won't be able to stop. Your fear may center on persistent thoughts or memories related to the illness or death. This can be a dilemma as you avoid these memories, yet fear that they may be all that you have. As you move through your grief process, you'll reclaim all your memories again. So hopefully some reassurance that as you move through your grief, that these memories will come back and will be part of you and your life. It's quite common to fear illness and dying for yourself and family members. I mentioned earlier, it often brings our own heightened sense of mortality, and we may become more sensitive to symptoms. So being very aware and hopefully being able to live our life with hope and that realistic viewpoint that as much as something did happen to our loved one, if we continue to be as safe and careful as possible, yes, none of us know when our last day, will be, but that it just doesn't automatically mean that we're going to become unwell because our loved one did. So what really does help us to ease our fear and anxiety? Naming our fear, first of all. Stop and focus, on your fear and anxiety. So this is the beginning of being able to manage them. Think about and explore what causes these feelings for me. A helpful saying might be, to name it is to tame it. So if you can get information about whatever causes you fear, that knowledge gives us more strength and power. If you do suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, make sure to ask your doctor for help and advice, and counseling support is very beneficial for that as well. Using problem-solving strategies to help with fear and anxiety, start by asking questions like, what do I need to do now? What can I tackle later? Who can help and what can they do? What resources do I have? Think small and organize things into bite-sized pieces. That's what I made reference to earlier, right? With the cutting grass, worrying about that now if you need someone to do that, but not, the snow removal. We'll leave that towards winter time. Chewable chunks, you may call it, or bite-sized pieces. Reviewing this process to identify what you've learned and can be used again. So, asking these questions, I'm going to repeat them. These may be helpful for you. Questions like, what do I need to do now? Versus what can I tackle later? Who can help and what can they do? What resources do I have? So continuing to review this process to identify what you learned and can use again in the future. As you begin to take control, you find that your fears begin to lift, so they're not as heavy on you. And also, another helper is to identify what soothes your anxiety. Notice what increases and decreases it. Does it help to be alone or with others? Use positive self-talk, for example. My body's responding to an emergency, but there is no emergency. I am safe. Make a list of what you can do when you feel panicked and what might be helpful. For example, call a certain friend. Be active and go for a walk. Clean the house. Exercise. Hang on to something comforting like a pillow or teddy bear, or perhaps an article of clothing that belonged to the person who died. Do something soothing like have a bath, a massage, or do some yoga. Maybe practice prayer, meditation, or visualization. There's not just one thing, and there's certainly not right or wrong. It's about trying things and identifying what works best for you. Always being mindful as well of your breath. Breathe slowly and exhale. Let the sensations of fear and anxiety remind you to breathe slowly and fully. Take a big breath in and let it out with a sigh. The other side of fear and anxiety, just a quote to a little blurb to finish off this section. You're responding to change and are ready for the challenge. There's a similarity between feeling anxious and being excited. Our heart rate goes up. We may have sweaty palms, dry mouth. Your stomach could be turning. Rather than tell yourself, I am afraid, say, I am ready. Fear is an indicator of being at your edge, but an edge where growth can happen. So again, lots there. Things perhaps that maybe you haven't thought about so much with emotion. And now, the piece of guilt. What causes us to feel guilty? Probably being reminded of something wrong we did in the past, saying something or doing something, even thinking something that we believe is wrong, causing harm or damage to someone else. Interpretations that prompt guilt. Thinking that your actions are to blame for something, thinking if only I had done something differently, thinking that you behaved badly. Biological changes when we feel guilty or shameful. Hot, red face, often very jittery and nervous, maybe a feeling of suffocation. How do we express our guilt? Trying to repair harm, make amends, in other words, make things right, change the outcome. Asking for forgiveness is another way. Apologize and confess, right? State what it was that you did do that ideally you wouldn't have. There might also be gift giving and making sacrifices to try to make up for the transgression, for what we did that we're guilty of. And after effects of guilt, making resolutions to change and making changes in our behavior, so we hopefully don't repeat this. So guilt, as it is specific to grief, most grieving people, we normally experience some feelings of guilt. To question ourselves and our experience is part of actually being human. We might feel responsible, whether or not it's rational, we often do feel responsible. And our own perfectionism or our own personal history may even magnify our sense of guilt. So think about that. Our own perfectionism, wanting to be everything to the person who was very unwell and do all what we can, that, may really magnify the guilt, as well as some personal history of things we wish maybe we would or wouldn't have said or done. We're trying to make meaning of something tragic and painful, so guilt arises from the belief that there must be a reason for everything that happens. When you're unable to find reasons, you might blame yourself, as this seems to be better than have no explanation at all. Guilt also arises from a vulnerable, self-critical point of view and feelings of helplessness and not being able to change things then or now. It's natural in grief to relive what happened, especially our own part in it, and ask questions like, what if? Why? And to wonder, yes, you know what I'm going to say, if only. We may have regrets about things done or not done, things said or not said, which can trap us in a downward spiral that feels very powerful and real. Our guilt may be based on negative judgments of ourselves and our own wishing and wanting to be perfect, right? Wanting to be as much as we can be. We may also have judgments about how we're grieving, for example. We may feel guilt about the relief that actually was felt at the time of death. You may tell yourself, if I were a better person, bad things would not happen. I would never make a mistake. I would not feel so bad. I wouldn't be weak in grieving. But feelings of guilt are often related to ideas about what we should be. Perhaps we tell ourselves that we should be strong, that we should remember the good and happy times, that we should not feel sad. Often these shoulds are echoed in the advice, unfortunately, of our family and social circle. So in other words, we place those shoulds on ourselves and others, things that we should have done. Maybe they're rational, but oftentimes they're not, because when it ends in death, it may not feel like anything that we did or said was enough. And often well-meaning people place shoulds on us as well, thinking, yes, you should have done this or said that, or you should have reconciled this fight that you had with the person who you now no longer will be able to speak to again. So what we want to do and need to do for that is to remember things that we did share, that we did say, that we did do. Our brains tend to go to the place of what we didn't do rather than what we did do. So if you're experiencing guilt, I'd like you to try to be as objective as you possibly can. Maybe there were some words spoken that were hurtful, that were not desirable. But I bet there were also words spoken of over the years that were very, that really kept you connected, where you really valued one another. We are human. We have disagreements at times. It's especially difficult if that disagreement was at the end of life. But I encourage you to also remember those peaceful times that you shared, all of the value in your relationship, right? So you're forcing your brain not just to go to a place of when things were not very good. Same with the relief piece. So often when there's been a caregiving role at the end of life and someone feels that they're doing all that they, physically and emotionally possibly can, but then later after death, they think, oh my goodness, I was so busy being nurse that I wasn't being wife, or I was so, busy being mom, being caregiver to my very ill child that I don't feel like I was, in my mom or dad role as much as I wanted. Of course, hospices and in other care roles have helped us in that way. But again, no matter what your circumstance, I would encourage you to look at what you did do rather than what you didn't do. And even if you lost your patience a few times, look at all those times that you were patient and giving and, lacking sleep and just doing so much. Guilt can really eat us alive, and we need to recognize what I did do and who I am is enough. And even that mantra of it is enough, or it was enough, or I gave all I could, those types of things to repeat to yourself quietly, verbally when you have the opportunity, maybe roundabout, that can help to ease the guilt. As can really examining the guilt and paying attention to what you say about yourself. Describe what you feel guilt about and examine it. Look what you're guilty of, the real part, and decide what else maybe you need to do about this. And forgive yourself. Guilt can feel like glue, holding you in a very uncomfortable place. So think of it this way: forgiveness is the solvent that loosens this up. So practice self-forgiveness by identifying what you can forgive yourself for, what parts of your guilt you can let go of. There may be parts that you're ready to not let go of yet. So again, step by step in your own time. Get a reality check. Talking to a trusted friend. This may help you separate more objectively the real guilt from what we'll call the groundless guilt. Okay? You may just be putting so much on yourself, and that could be a real unrealistic expectation. Think about when I speak of these different dynamics of guilt, we tend to be so difficult on ourselves, right? Who do we tend to be so most critical of? Ourselves. So if you think about how you would, treat a really good friend, what advice you would give them, try to give some of that to your own self and not have so much heaviness and be so harsh on the guilt that you're taking on. We need to take action. Consider making amends rather than punishing yourself. And remember, once you are able to do that, that is really helpful. Maybe the guilt that you have can be lessened by doing some charity work, some positive action, or maybe change in your behavior. Plan what will be most helpful for you. Think about that and what action steps you'll take, or what person you need to talk to help work through this guilt. And repeat this as necessary, sorting through this guilt, hopefully letting a bit go each time. I'm just envisioning, like a pile of clothes, for example, and as you sort that, right, that pile that needs to go, and hopefully, you've worn out some enough that they can be used as rags, for example. Just like guilt, hopefully you can get past some of it, that it can just feel like you can dispose of that and not carry it as you were. Because the other side of guilt, as this statement to wrap up this guilt piece says, honor your guilt as a teacher of what you believe is right and wrong. In searching for meaning in the midst of your grief, you learn what you want to hold on to and value. And again, you find growth in this experience. So let us not allow the guilt to overtake us, because guilt is certainly a natural and common component of grief. Sometimes we act, though, as if we can control random happenings, even when we cannot. Okay? So we need to recognize and remember that death is part of life. So a little bit further on tips for coping with guilt. Identify what you feel guilty about. Listen to those messages you give yourself and disrupt those guilty thoughts. Write down your guilt-related statements. Consider what you would say, I just mentioned that a few minutes ago, to your good friend. Reflect on what you expected of yourself as well. Was it realistic or not? Ask what it would take you to forgive yourself and channel the energy of your guilt into a worthwhile project. So, keeping all of these things in mind, what's beneficial for you to lessen that guilt that you're feeling. All right, now just a little focus on love, because we do need to highlight love as well. Although it can be painful, this form of reflection can help all of us in our ability to regulate, manage, and allow ourselves to experience strong emotions, right? More safely and with confidence. So yes, it's important to highlight the love that we had for the person and that we always will, even though they're not physically present. So prompting events for love. Yes, being with someone we have we do have fun with or have had fun with in the past. Sharing or have shared a special experience with, spent a lot of time with, feeling or felt physically or emotionally safe with a person. Interpretations that prompt love. Believing that a person loves, needs, or appreciates you. Believing that a person can be counted on, will be there, or was there for you, right? Think of friends and family members that you value. And yes, this makes sense, the reason that we do love them. Judging someone as wonderful, pleasing, or attractive. Biological changes. When we're thinking about someone, we feel excited when we love them. Our heart may beat faster. We feel more confident. And there's that tendency to also feel more relaxed and calm. When we love, we also want the best for a person. We want to see and spend time with them and want to be emotionally close. Expressions of love. Saying I love you. Sharing eye contact in that mutual, gaze that we look at one another and hold those feelings in our eyes. Smiling with or at someone, sharing not only time but also experiences, and doing things that the other person needs or wants. And lastly, the after effects. Remembering other people you do love and have loved, and also that have loved you. In addition, remembering other positive events and believing in yourself, believing you're wonderful, capable, and able, right? In other words, competent. So these various charts were taken from the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Training Manual by Marsha Linehan. So just referring to those in case there's further information that you would like to look up. But perhaps the depth of this, right? We have our emotions, but we may not always feel, we may not always think about where they come from and the impacts that they have within our physical and emotional bodies. All right, so just going to give you opportunity for a break here before we get into the next part. Okay, so we will come back shortly if you just pause as long or short as you need, and we'll be back with the meditation and mindfulness piece. Thank you. So welcome back. As you know, we covered the portion on emotional regulation with a specific focus on guilt. Now we're going to go into the mindfulness portion of this webinar. So first of all, you've perhaps heard about mindfulness, but just to make sure you know what it is actually a form of meditation. Perhaps you're curious about how to practice it or find out how to do mindfulness exercises that might benefit you. So we're going to go into these types of things. So mindfulness is actually the act of being intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling at every moment, but without interpretation or judgment. So looking at this screen, mindfulness of our current emotions allow us to begin the process of letting go of emotional suffering. It does take time and is very personal for each of us, but it's about stepping back and just noticing our emotion. Experiencing our emotion perhaps as a wave coming and going. And then imagine surfing that emotional wave. Try not to block or suppress the emotion. Don't try to get rid of it or push it away. And also don't try to be forceful in keeping it around. We don't want to hold on to it and amplify it, but just more so be with it. So when we practice mindfulness of our body sensations, we're noticing where in our body we're feeling these sensations and experiencing the sensations as fully as we can, and observing how long it takes before the emotion goes down. Another term that you've perhaps heard of is grounding. So just to clarify again what grounding is. Grounding is a set actually of simple strategies that can help you detach from your emotional pain. For example, anger, anxiety, sadness, self-harm. It's basically a way to distract yourself by focusing on something other than the difficult emotions you're experiencing. You may think of grounding as centering, distracting, creating a safe place, or healthy detachment. So being clear that grounding does not solve the problem that's contributing to your unpleasant emotions, but it does provide a temporary way to gain control over your feelings and prevent them from getting worse. So grounding actually anchors you, gives you a chance to calm down, and allows you to eventually return and address the problem that's triggering that unpleasant emotion. Grounding can be done anywhere, anytime, and no one even has to know. There's actually 3 types of grounding. You may find that one works better than the others for you, but there's mental grounding, focusing your mind, physical, focusing your senses, and soothing. So that would be talking to yourself in a very kind way. So hopefully that explanation and clarification is beneficial for you. Maybe you've heard these terms before, but not really been clear on what they mean. And remember also, we experience emotions, but we're not our emotions. So emotional regulation, in order to accumulate positive emotions, we first of all do not want to avoid our emotions. They're not good or bad, they just are what they are. So we need to accept them. We feel different at different times of the day, right? One minute we may feel fine, the next minute something could be triggered inside, or there might be an external trigger that changes that. But we do need to respect and not judge our emotion. If we can actually radically accept our emotion and, own, I know how I feel, and it's because this happened, for example. So first of all, we need, like I said, to avoid avoiding our emotion. We need to start to do what's needed to build our own life. We have that choice. If we're not sure what to do, these steps perhaps will be helpful. Identify values that are important to you. So ask yourself, what values are really important to me in my life? Identify a value to work on now. Ask, what's really important to me right now to work on? Identify a few goals related to this value and ask, what specific goals can I work on that will make this value part of my life? Choose a goal to work on now. Doing a pros and cons list, that can be very helpful as well, and select that goal. You want to identify small action steps, not be too broad or overambitious, because you want to be able to achieve what you're setting out to do. So it's about asking, what small steps can I take to get to my goal? And then take one action step. And give yourself credit for what you have done and the steps you're taking. We tend to minimize what we do, but even something like, I attended this seminar, right? I read 5 pages of this certain book. I read and focused on and remembered for the day. It was really helpful to me, an inspirational verse. It can be whatever is meaningful and helpful to you. So some practical coping strategies as well. Perhaps thinking about talking as your power drink. If you embrace feelings and allow them, that's so helpful. So to talk about things rather than just keep them all bottled up inside makes such a huge difference, right? When we suppress our feelings or just, want to be quiet about them and not share with that trusted person, they become so much heavier, so much larger. And maybe some sample reflections too. If it was a storm, what kind of storm would it be? If you were a color, what color would you be? And maybe at times you do feel gray, for example, when you're really struggling, but then also being very mindful, recognizing when things become more positive again, perhaps there's a more calm blue, for example. And this next one is also very key. If there was a wise person inside of you, what would they say? What kind of messages would they tell you? What would they, offer to you for, positive life advice? And some other strategies that might be helpful for you. There are times when we need to put our stuff aside and just have a little bit of time away from that stressor. So you may put it in a mailbox and slam it shut. Probably figuratively, maybe you have, something in your yard by your door that, or somewhere in your home, maybe even a container that you could put something in. But it's more than likely, right, imagining, putting that feeling. It probably isn't even a piece of paper that you would want to do that with, but putting that stuff you're carrying inside this box or inside this container when you just need to let it go, even for a few hours or for an evening. Or maybe, you're coming home from a day and there was a great deal of heaviness, and you'll walk beside purposely a big tree in your yard when you go to the door to enter. And you'll just leave it there, and knowing that you can pick it up the next day to follow up with it when you're back on your way out. So again, strategies that are very personal and work for you. And it may also be about developing your own sacred place, your place that gives you strength, positive energy to get in touch with your senses. In other words, to get in touch with your vital breath and being able to work with what you want and need to. So one technique that is quite common, whether or not you've heard of this before, it's called square breathing. Quite a simplistic breathing technique, but very, very helpful. So this form of breathing actually helps regulate our nervous system and lets our body and mind know that we're not in danger. So the steps for square breathing, as you can see on the screen, we start at the top, slowly breathing in through your nose, filling your lungs. And if you're having a hard time filling your lungs with air, maybe it's about when you're breathing in, press lightly on your chest to help you visualize the air moving into the bottom lung, okay? And then as you see on the right side, hold and count 2, 3, 4, then exhale through your mouth. And if you can, deflate your lungs as much as possible. And the final step is to rest and complete a body scan. This is when we check in with our body, how I'm feeling, and if I need another breath. So that's the process. Again, it's called square breathing, as we keep the same count for each stage. And if you're feeling that you may benefit from further grounding during this exercise, what you can do is actually trace a square on your hand or perhaps your leg while you're completing each step. So it would be like inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, I'm tracing it on my hand right in the shape of the square. So let's just try this for a minute. We'll go through just as a brief practice. So first of all, breathe in, and remember to trace this on your hand or your leg if you so choose. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, rest, 2, 3, 4. And I'll suggest that if you're comfortable that you close your eyes, because there can be an even fuller effect in doing these exercises with eyes closed. Okay, so we'll try that again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale. And then you would keep going like that, as long or short as is helpful for you. Okay, so that's square breathing. Now we'll move on to look at what a progressive muscle relaxation is as well. So basically what you're doing for progressive muscle relaxation is breathing in, tensing a specific muscle group. You can name that body part. For example, on this chart, the first one is the feet. So tensing the feet hard, but not to the point of pain or cramping. Hold this for a suggested 4 to 10 seconds. Then breathe out, slowly releasing this muscle group, and you can name that body part. Allow yourself to connect to the sensation that the muscle group is feeling. Then relax for a suggested 10 to 20 seconds before you work on the next muscle group. Notice the difference between how the muscles feel when they are tense and how they feel when they're relaxed. Okay, so we'll just try this briefly. I'm not going to go through every muscle group. You'll be able to do that on your own in the future if you choose, but we'll start just so you can get a feel for how this goes. So again, suggesting closing your eyes if you're comfortable to do so. So first of all, breathing in and tense your feet. Tense the muscles hard, but not to the point of pain or cramping. Holding it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out and slowly release the muscle groups in the feet. Allow yourself to connect into the sensation that this muscle group is feeling, whatever that is, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then notice the difference between how the muscle feels when they're tense and how they feel when they're relaxed. Let's do the next one. Lower legs. So breathe in and tense the lower legs. Tense the muscle hard, but not to the point of pain or cramping. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out and slowly release this muscle group, the lower legs. Allow yourself to connect to the sensation that this muscle group is feeling. Relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Notice the difference between how the muscles feel when they're tensed and how they feel when they're relaxed. And we'll do one more. Breathe in and tense the upper legs. Tense the muscles hard, but not to the point of pain or cramping. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out and slowly release this muscle group. Allow yourself to connect into the sensation that the muscle group is feeling as now the upper legs are relaxed, and hold it that way relaxed for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Notice the difference between how the muscles feel when they're tense versus how they feel now that they're relaxed. And then you would keep going, right? As you can see, the diagram suggests next to stomach, to the chest, shoulders, back, upper arms, lower arms, hands, neck, and face. Okay, so just being with that as well as you can do, on your own time and in your own space, hopefully a relaxed, quiet area when you do try this. Okay, so let's look further at the mindfulness piece. So our awareness. During a state of mindfulness, you'll notice your thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations as they happen. I want you to be clear that the goal is not to clear your mind or stop thinking, but become aware of your thoughts and feelings. rather than get lost in them. So again, the goal isn't to totally clear your mind or not think, but become aware of your thoughts and feelings. And acceptance. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations that you notice ideally will be observed in a non-judgmental way. Okay, so if you're feeling sad, simply stating that. I notice that I'm feeling sad, right? Or I'm very overwhelmed with emotion right now. I'm feeling very hurt at this time, whatever it is, right? I'm feeling very frustrated. No need to further judge or force yourself to try to change that feeling. Just be with it. Because remember, as much as some emotions feel much more positive and easier to deal with, there are no negative emotions. They just are what they are. So the benefits of mindfulness, right? I mentioned briefly earlier, just want to highlight again, reduce symptoms actually of depression and anxiety. So that, as well as reduced rumination. When we repetitively go over a thought or problem, that can help to a point, but when it becomes chronic and it just doesn't stop, right? Mindfulness can really help that as well. And with mindfulness, we tend to have greater satisfaction with relationships, improved memory, focus, and even mental processing speed. It gives us an improved ability to adapt to stressful situations and to manage our emotions. And the more we practice acceptance of our feelings and emotions, when we're no longer fighting their occurrence, we're actually building up our self-confidence and our ability to sit, and when I use the terminology, be with them, right? Sit in that emotion and distress. When we stop trying to force ourselves to change the emotion, we're actually releasing it and reducing our suffering. We suffer when we hold on to or to try to change something that we actually have no control over, okay? So, we don't want to create that suffering any more than, things are already difficult, right? So when we can embrace that emotion and just be with it, of what we're feeling, but not try to change something that is outside our window of control. So some mindfulness strategies furthering this here. You may try sitting in a comfortable place, begin paying attention to your breathing. Notice the physical sensation of your air filling up your sensation of air filling your lungs and then leaving. When your mind wanders, which please expect that it will, we simply notice our thoughts and turn our attention back to our breathing. While walking, you might do a mindfulness exercise as well, right? You just make a point to practice it. Start by noticing how your body moves and feels with each step. Then expand your awareness to see your surroundings. What do you see, hear, smell, and feel? And this technique can be used in other activities as well. There's certain things that you might be doing during your day, perhaps even folding laundry or something like that, right? And notice how your body moves as you're doing so, and then expand your awareness to what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling. So it's very possible to practice this here throughout the day more than you may have even realized. All right, so on that note, we're going to actually do a relaxation meditation exercise. I'll just bring you through this. Ideally, you're sitting or laying down in a comfortable position, and you'll just listen to my voice and hopefully allow yourself to be in the moment where this mindfulness exercise takes you, okay? So just try to be in the moment, ideally with your eyes closed, and when your mind wanders, it's just, again, encouraging yourself to bring that back. Not feeling ashamed, because that is very normal, but just bringing back to this present moment that you're in. All right, so we're going to begin by centering our body. I want you to begin to just slow down your pace. We're often very action-oriented and moving, so just slowly. we want to go to a place that will bring more healing and relaxation. Some call it a prayer state, some a meditative state, and others a creative energy. Really, it doesn't matter what we choose to call it, but we're there now. Once we are there, we know it's special. It works, and it is healing. If your mind begins to wander, bring it back by just focusing on your breathing. Starting by being very mindful of where you are at this moment. Hopefully it feels to be a safe place for you. So focusing ourselves, taking a deep breath through our nose, feeling every part of it, and letting it out at your own pace. Feel your body on the floor or chair, put your feet on the floor, whatever your position, wherever you are at, just feel your body being in that place. Feel the presence of anything around you. And as you do that, feel hope, love, and healing. Inhale another breath through your nose. Feel every part of it. And once again, exhale. This time, let's breathe in a thought of love. In any shape or form as you know it. Let it resonate from your head to your heart to your toes. Breathing in, then exhale at your own pace. Letting the feeling take you out. Take some breaths in your own place and time. Breathe deeply. Feel whatever is beneath you. The chair, your feet on the floor, if you're sitting or laying on a couch or floor, feel that beneath you. Know what purpose you are here for. Our goal is to bring increased peace, light, and love into our lives. Renew our energies for new beginnings and ways to integrate the past into the present, as well as embrace the future, which is different. I invite you to listen to my voice and to take a breath in. Again, let it fill you. Be in touch with the breath of life that flows through you constantly and can heal you. And exhale. And again, breathe in peace. And exhale anxiety. And let that go. Again, breathing in. Breathe in further peace and exhale anger. And let that go. Once again, breathing in, breathe in peace and exhale guilt and blame. And let it go. Just for a moment, let your breath breathe you. If your mind goes anywhere, just bring it back to the breath for a moment. Breathing in and out. Breathe in and breathing out. As you hear my voice, I invite you to take a breath. And as you breathe in, to imagine a glowing, warm, loving light above you. Let that light gently move through your forehead, relaxing any tension that might still be there. Breathing in and out at your own pace and your own level. As this warm light moves down your face, it releases tension even in your eyes, perhaps enabling you to see something that is difficult. Moves down your cheeks and evens the lines out and the stress. Even your mouth gently opens, soft, easy, moving you down even heavier, relaxing you a bit more. Knowing it's okay to let go for just a while, you are in full control, and the light moves, the warm, glowing, loving light that seems to know your name and everything about you and cares infinitely for you, embracing you and holding you closely. Rubs your shoulders, releasing any tension that is left over. Down your arms, relaxing, heavy, deeper. Moving through your fingertips, opening them up, relaxing the tension into the air. Release that. You don't need it now. Gently move up your arms, up your shoulders. Let it flow through and fill you. Down your chest. Breathe into the heart area. Once again, massage it with love and care. Try to open it up to what might be fearful. And even through the pain, you can see a glimmer of hope. Breathe into the heart with the light. See the beautiful glowing sun, relaxing deeper and deeper. Into the belly where we carry so much emotion. Gently let the light massage it. There's nowhere to go but this place that we're in. Just be in the moment. Now exhaling. Down through your legs to carry you through the day. Down through the thighs, the muscles. Deeper, heavier. With each movement, you are more and more relaxed. In a place that is safe. Down through your knees, to your legs and to your feet. Massaging gently, releasing tension all into the floor. Relaxing. Embracing this moment that we are in, knowing you are infinitely cared for. Breathing in the color of your choice and let that color fill you. Let it go to the broken spaces and all the way down. picture your color moving through you, deeper and fuller, letting it fill you and hold you. Bring that chosen color to where it is needed, feeling more relaxed. Feeling the light in the room above your head, being with the familiar surroundings. Once again, feeling whatever is beneath you. Just be present. Hold this moment. And as you're ready, in a way that's right for you, you will open your eyes, just slowly, allowing yourself to feel relaxed and refreshed. Taking the time you need as you reawaken and slowly open your eyes. I hope there was some comfort, some ability to be in the moment as we did this sample exercise to help you know what it's like to just be present, to just have your thoughts focused on your breath and the present time. And these exercises can be shorter than this, longer than this, but whatever length they are, it's the importance of just being, which can be challenging to do because we're so used to doing, and we have the understanding that success is about producing, where oftentimes it is, but we also need to be re-energized, right? Refueled, revitalized, and it's doing these types of things that are helpful. And you can certainly find more mindfulness exercises online. You may get one of the apps. Common ones are Calm, Headspace, Breathe. So see what works best for you. But I hope this awareness again was helpful. So another mindfulness strategy is to do a body scan, paying close attention to the physical sensations throughout your body, starting with your feet, moving up through body parts, and spend anywhere from 15 seconds to a minute on each body part. So basically, you're remembering to breathe, and if thoughts appear, again, acknowledge them and let them float away, allowing yourself to redirect your focus back to the sensations you feel in your body. Okay, so this is what we want to do, and this example on the right is actually called 5 senses grounding. Okay, so what you do is you are aware of your 5 senses and you just work through each one. So I'll just give you an example. So you're sitting comfortable in your chair, taking 3 deep breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth, and allow yourself to become connected to your senses. So first of all, we'll focus on sight. Look at an object in the room. Is it bright? Is there a reflection? Really focus on this specific object. And we do this with 5 objects, focusing on our attention on that object for about 30 seconds before moving on. Doing the same with touch. Focus on how your shirt feels on your body. Is it soft? Is it tight? Can you feel its weight in you? And allow yourself to focus specifically on how your shirt feels. Again, we do this with 5 objects. Perhaps the pen you're holding, your sock, a ring, how your hair feels on your scalp. Focusing your attention for for about 30 seconds before moving on. Then go to hearing, sitting quietly, just listening for 5 different sounds. We don't want to rush it. If you're in a loud room, can you hear the background noise? Maybe a fan, the lights, talking in another room, a car in the distance. Focusing our attention on that object, again for about 30 seconds before moving on. Then smell, allowing yourself to take a deep breath in through your nose, being aware of what you smell. Maybe your laundry detergent, what's cooking, the smell of rain, focusing your attention to that object for about 30 seconds before moving on. And then we look for, or we go to taste. Allow yourself to sit and focus on what you're tasting. Think about the last thing you ate or drank and connect yourself to that sense, focusing your attention to that taste for about 30 seconds before moving on. We'll look for a couple different tastes. Maybe there's something currently in your mouth, or again, it might be the last thing you ate. Thinking about chewing slowly and allowing yourself to connect with that taste and texture of what you are chewing or have just recently eaten. So meditation has many different benefits. It's linked with feeling less stress as well as lowering our cortisol or stress hormone levels. It helps us process our emotions even when we're not actively meditating. And it's linked with decreased cigarette, alcohol, and drug use. We experience less anxiety as meditation loosens connections to particular neural pathways, or in other words, our thinking patterns. So there's a website with some simple guided meditations for beginners as well. Noting for sure when we meditate, we want to be kind to ourselves. If it's difficult at first, that's okay. As we're relaxing our body and shifting our thoughts, other thoughts may appear. But like I said earlier, being non-judgmental of those is the best we can do. Just acknowledge it and let it fade. Shifting your focus back to the meditation. You can also release thoughts with the use of imagination. You can picture yourself taking the thought and placing it on a shelf, imagining the thoughts are floating away on a cloud, a balloon, or on a leaf floating down the river. However you picture releasing the thought is okay. The release of the thought will be specific and unique for each of us. It's not about right or wrong. Okay, so however you experience that, that is certainly helpful and fine and very individual for you. Another example of a meditation practice is the 9-0 meditation. So basically what you would do, breathe in deeply, breathe out slowly, saying in your mind the number 9. On the next breath out, say 8, then 7, and so on until you breathe out saying 0. Then you start over, but this time with 8 instead of 9 as you breathe out, followed by 7 and so on. Then start with 6, 5, 4, until you've gone all the way down, starting with, and so on until you've gone all the way to 1. Okay? If you do get lost in the midst of this process, just start with the last number you remember and continue until you fall asleep. And because this one is quite monotonous, this one often is very helpful for falling asleep as well. So again, breathe in deeply, saying the number 9. On the next breath out, say 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay? And then go to 8, right? So saying in your mind the number 8, and then the next breath out, 7, and downward. And keep just going in that process. And that hopefully is helpful for relaxation and potentially obtaining sleep. And speaking of sleep, we talked about this in the first webinar somewhat as well, but just want to go over some sleep hygiene protocol And if you've already watched that webinar, this might be a good reminder. If you haven't, this could be new to you. But how to increase the likelihood of restfulness and sleep when we're feeling tired. And this could be beneficial for any time, but especially when we're grieving, right? To be bereaved members, to be torn apart, and to have special needs. So often when we are so torn apart, it's hard to shut our mind down and get that good rest. So rumination and thinking something over and over, remember, can be very difficult to stop. So if the rumination doesn't stop, perhaps it would be helpful for you, if it's a solvable solution in that moment, to solve it. If it's unsolvable, maybe you'll try this technique to set a timer for 10 minutes and allow yourself to go deeply into the worry, all the way to catastrophe. Worry about what it is that is on your mind. Think even of the very worst outcome you can imagine, followed by the very best outcome. Then imagine how you're coping ahead with the catastrophe. After the timer goes off, we'll then use grounding and meditation to calm ourselves. So if the overthinking and the worry continue, remind yourself, I've given myself time to think about this. Now I will sleep. I can think about this again tomorrow if I need to. This can be a little bit intense, but what the premise of this is to allow yourself to go deep into worry, but then to shut that off, okay? And reassure yourself also that worries in the middle of the night are middle of the night worries, right? And in the morning, you will think and feel differently. They seem less large, okay? So developing and following a consistent sleep schedule, even on weekends, going to bed and getting up at the same time each day is helpful. And if you are having trouble sleeping, avoiding naps during the day as well. Not using your bed in the daytime for things like watching TV, talking on the phone, or reading also, and avoiding caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, heavy meals, and also exercise late in the day before going to sleep. You want to do whatever you can to assist your sleep if you're struggling in that area. As well, when you're prepared to sleep, turn off the light, keep the room quiet and the temperature comfortable, perhaps relatively cool. Maybe a sleeping mask or earplugs, or turning on one of those white noise machines is even helpful for you, okay? So just looking at what is beneficial for your own situation. Give yourself half an hour, at most an hour, to fall asleep. Shutting off screens, TVs, computers, and cell phones, okay? Do that ahead of time. We don't want the light and the stimulation of screens to interfere with sleep. Some people say that they do need to watch TV in order to fall asleep. If you've tried everything else and that's the only way that you can, perhaps you'll have to go to that, but it isn't recommended for the stimulation of the screen and even some of that noise that you're kind of hearing off and on as you're trying to sleep, and the level of the volume changes. If it doesn't work, evaluate whether you're calm or anxious. And practice the mindfulness strategies that we've talked about also if you're feeling emotionally heightened. Try to avoid making the decision to give up on sleeping for the night and get up for the day. So if it's still the middle of the night, try to still make that effort and get some sleep, because if you get up too early when it's actually the middle of the night, you don't want to get your sleep cycle all thrown off, because that becomes very difficult as well. But if you're calm but wide awake, it can be helpful to get out of bed, go to another room, read, or do some activity that won't wake you up further. As you begin to get tired or sleepy, then decide to go back to bed. A healthy light snack may be helpful as your favorite meditation practices. It notes here maybe the 9 to 0 as we just looked at a few minutes ago. Focusing also on the bodily sensation of the rumination. Rumination, or the racing thoughts, is often an escape from difficult emotional sensations. So you want to practice some grounding techniques, right? When I mentioned earlier the benefits of grounding, simple strategies that can help you detach from your emotional pain. Maybe that will be about imagining. Maybe that will be, counting to 10 even, or saying the alphabet very slowly. Describing in your mind an everyday activity in detail. You can maybe clench your fists and then release them. So a grounding technique that is helpful for you, maybe there's something soothing that you can wear or hold on to, and that will be very soothing and calming for you. Or even a coping statement that you find beneficial. I can do this. This feeling will pass, etc. Okay, so again, reflecting, seeing what's helpful for you. If nothing else works with your eyes closed, you may try listening to public radio at a low volume, using headphones if that's helpful. Public radio, the reason we recommend this is because there's little fluctuation in the voice tone or volume. Okay, realizing that sleep difficulties can be very frustrating, which is why these various techniques are provided. And just to wrap up, remember, self-care is so vitally important. It's any activity that we do to take care of our own mental, emotional, and physical health. It's simple in theory, but that common sense of self-care isn't always common practice in what we do. And reminder that it's not anything selfish, right? Self-care is not selfish. It's actually knowing what we need to do in order to take care of ourselves. And that allows us to also be helpful and present with others. So I like to consider it like an investment in ourselves, something that we need to do in order to keep well. Because if we don't practice self-care, we often have low energy, we feel more hopeless, we're more impatient. Physically, we tend to get more headaches, stomach aches, other physical symptoms. Our sleep is impacted. We find choosing healthy food more difficult, and we have the urge to eat comfort foods. We may also have mental health symptoms that worsen, like depression and or anxiety, feel burnt out, can't focus and concentrate well. The relationships that we have, even with our very close loved ones, including our spouse or partner, become strained or distant when we're not taking care of ourselves. Less patience in general, I said earlier, but also with our children, reduced performance at work potentially, and less motivation even to engage in social activities. So see such a whole list of what occurs when we don't practice self-care. So it's 100% important. So what about some ideas that we might put into place for self-care? There's a multitude, but I'll just list these few just to give you an idea. It might be as simple as a hot cup of tea. Maybe it's about music, upbeat at times. Other days you may choose relaxing music or meditation programs. Taking just a few minutes to sit down and put your feet up, enjoying a hot shower, just being in the moment to intentionally enjoy that, going for a walk at any time, morning, over your lunch break, evening, scheduling a date night with your spouse, partner, or friends to connect without distractions, doing that as suitable depending in the midst of the pandemic. That, of course, has been difficult, but even, ordering out or watching a movie, that type of thing. Spending a few minutes just focusing on your breathing. A manicure, pedicure, giving yourself one as well is even very enjoyable, and just calming, good self-care. Turning your phone off. We do have our phones often these days as an extension of us, but just walking away or shutting it off for a brief time. Participating in classes, either in person or online, like yoga, swimming, going to the gym, or participating in other activities. Certainly creative ideas like crocheting, knitting, drawing, coloring, woodworking, diamond art, doing things that are therapeutic and creative, largely beneficial too. Light a yummy smelling candle, write in a journal for 5 minutes or longer, whatever time frame works with you. Perhaps a gratitude journal. I find that's really beneficial, just to list even 2 or 3 things that we're grateful for, and that is beneficial for seeing things in perspective. Reading a book for even a short time, going to bed a little early can be great self-care as well. And if you've been following someone on social media who's negative or makes you feel bad, it's just not, a positive, uplifting relationship, or, not positive for you to read what they're saying, consider unfollowing. We all have to set boundaries and parameters that are beneficial for each of us as individuals. And wanting to highlight here as well, if you feel that you are in need of support, by all means reach out to our agency. This is the phone number provided. There's also a website for a multitude of bereavement resources. If you've already done an intake with our agency, you will know that that involves attending this seminar, as well as the first education seminar for awareness and support. If you are experiencing normative grief, we do now have a partnership with Family Services Windsor-Essex. This is for people, of course, in the Windsor-Essex area who are watching. There will be up to 3 sessions that you can participate in free of charge. And then there's also the choice to participate in a loss-specific group, whether or not you engage in the one-on-one. But once you initiate support, this will be explained and you'll be guided through this process. Group, that's as well if you choose and it's deemed a suitable fit. If it's determined that you're experiencing complex grief or trauma, we still highly recommend that you attend this education seminar, as well as the other one on foundational information about grief and mourning and coping strategies. Then you will engage in one-on-one therapy, and you will also probably have the choice to participate in a loss-specific group if that's something that you also feel would be a good fit and helpful for you. So we've gone through a good amount of material here today. I hope that wherever you come from, wherever you're at on your journey or supporting someone else, that you recognize that remembering certainly can be a peaceful communion, a sweet peace, a time to ask and listen. So yes, grief is definitely a struggle. It's a very challenging part of life, but something that we all need to endure. So putting things into place, allowing others to support you, very beneficial. And I hope that you will reach out and allow the support that is most helpful for you. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. And I certainly hope it was helpful, and potentially our paths will cross in the future in a group setting, perhaps. So again, thank you so much. Take good care.